Good morning once again. Okay, just making sure. It was really quiet for a second there. I remember being at a garage sale in my neighborhood when I was about 8, 9 years old, and in this garage sale, it was just a neighbor down the street. I was riding my bike. I saw they were having a garage sale. I don't remember ever having gone to a garage sale before, so I went into their garage, and I was just looking at different things, and there was this clock on this table. Not just a clock, a radio alarm clock, and it was white plastic. It was cheap. It was, just old. If you remember, not even the flip, like digital looking numbers, like the actual hands around the clock kind of clock on one side and a radio speaker on the other, and I think both knobs are still there for the radio itself. But over the speaker was this bright red Arkansas Razorback, and it was a Razorback radio alarm clock. Oh my goodness! And I just thought, I've found the greatest treasure ever. I need to have this. And I looked at the price tag, and if I remember right, the price tag said $10. Now, some of you are rolling your eyes going, I wouldn't give $5 for that now, especially in the garage sale. I don't even know if it worked. I don't know either. I just thought I saw Razorback radio alarm clock. It's a must-have. You got to have it. And so I rode my bike home as fast as I could, and I went to see how much money I had, and I might have had like maybe $3. And I go find my dad, and I was like, Dad, I need to either borrow. If I can have some money now, I'll do some chores and make up for it. But I need $7. And he said, "What for?" And I said, "There's the garage sale down the street. There's this Razorback clock, this Razorback radio alarm clock, and I want to have it. I want to get it. And so I need to borrow some money." And he's like, "Well, what's it look like?" And I told him, and he's like, "Well, does it work?" I'm like, "I don't know, but I need to have it. I've got to have it." And he said, "Well, do you think that's what it's worth?" And I'm thinking, it's a bargain. This is like one of the greatest treasures. $10, that's all? $10? Of course. And basically my dad gave me some words of wisdom on why that wouldn't be the wisest purchase in the world, and failed to give me the $7 for which I was seeking. And I was so distraught. And really, I look back on it now, and I tell my dad about it. I don't think he even remembers it now, but we still kind of laugh about it anyway, because I had it in my mind, this is going to be the greatest thing ever. This is going to be one of the greatest purchases I could have ever made. I had dreamed in my mind of, I don't even know if I thought that maybe there was the Razorback, fight song or something was going to play and wake me up every morning. Or I don't even know what all I had in my mind, but it was just like a spotlight from heaven was shining down this thing, and I was supposed to have it. It was my holy grail that I had been searching. I didn't even know I was looking for it, and there it was. It was all a myth. It was a piece of junk. The reason it's in a garage sale is because either it didn't work or it didn't work well. They wouldn't be getting rid of it otherwise. And there was no need for me to have it. But I wanted to spend my money on it because I was convinced that was what I needed. That would give me happiness. Have you been there? Not necessarily with an Arkansas Razorback clock. I know if you found one of those now, you would think, as I would, greatest treasure ever. But have you in your lifetime, maybe several years ago, maybe a year or two ago, maybe a few months ago, maybe last week, done something maybe not so wise with your finances? And maybe even thought about it for a little bit. Maybe even thought, this is the pros and cons. Is this a good thing? Is this a bad thing? Should I not? And you're convinced you should do it, and then you find out all the things you had in mind of what it was going to be like to have that particular thing, or purchase that particular thing, or buy those particular tickets, or go to that particular place. All you had in your mind of how great it was going to be, it was kind of a letdown. Wasn't all that I had worked out in my mind to be. See, the thing is, we have these things that we want, at least for the moment, and we build them up in our minds to be these great things, and often, not always, but often, they don't pan out. And then we have nothing but regret, remorse, guilt, frustration. Until the next thing comes along, we repeat the process, right? Keep that in mind. We've been talking about busting marriage myths over the last month. This is our last myth that we're going to bust today. We talked about different things that we either assumed going into marriage to be true and weren't completely true, or after we've been married for a little while, some things that we thought were accurate and they're not, and how to make those things, not only how to bust those myths, but how to make those parts of our lives better. How to deal with it when problems come, when things don't go the way they're supposed to, when we're not having our fairy tale happily ever after marriage. How to deal with it when there's miscommunication, when we're not on the same page with our spouse, and how to be in a better habit of being on the same page more often. We talked last week about how to deal with confrontation. There's going to be arguments. There's going to be disagreements. It's going to happen. How do we deal with that in a positive way, in a productive way? This morning, the myth that we're going to bust is what I'm calling the financial peace myth when it comes to marriage. And this, see, some of y'all are already laughing. This myth is based on the assumption that when we got married, my spouse and I were going to have all the money that we would ever need. And it might take us a little bit of time to get there. We're not crazy, but it might take us a little bit of time to get there. But eventually, we would be able to live in a big house and have multiple cars and big TVs and be able to go on all the vacations that we want to go on and eat out as often as we want to and order on whatever part of the menu that we want to order on. And maybe we just assumed that we could get those things just because of the person we're marrying. He's got a good job. She's got a good job. And so I'm going to be able to get all this stuff. He's going to be able to afford the things I want to have. Her job is always going to be able to provide for me to get the tickets to those games or the different vacations that I want to do. Or maybe we see others. Maybe before we got married, we saw other married couples and saw the lifestyle they had and think, well, I'm just going to have that myself. Or after we got married, we're looking around, we're looking at other people who have been married maybe the same time as us, maybe even fewer years than we've been married. And we're looking at all the stuff that they have and all the places they get to go and all the things that they get to do. And we assume that we should have that ourselves. Why shouldn't we get to have that stuff? Why shouldn't we get to do all those things? And what it boils down to is assumptions that we made about our financial status before we got married or not very long after. Maybe I should rename this. Maybe it's not that this is just the financial peace myth. Maybe we should call this the automatic financial peace myth. That the belief that just putting a wedding ring on my finger is going to guarantee that I'm never going to have to worry about my finances again. That things are always going to go the way they're supposed to. I'm always going to have money, that I'm never going to make any dumb financial decisions. And if we happen to make dumb financial decisions, we'll always have enough money to pay our way out of them. And the belief that if my spouse and I have a big enough house, and if we live in the right neighborhood, and we have the newest decorations in our house, and the latest model cars, and the newest TVs, and all the coolest new gadgets, and get to go on all the really cool all-inclusive vacations, that we will have peace and happiness. It's a guarantee. It's a myth. And it's a myth to assume that those things are just going to happen automatically just because we got married and combined two salaries together. Maybe we assume that we'll be able to afford all these things, and even if we have to go into debt to have it, that's going to be okay because I'm just going to have the peace of mind that I'm going to be just like, and our family's going to be just like everybody else. We might not even articulate it that way. But there are some of us, many of us in this room, who had some kind of assumption about what kind of financial peace we were just automatically going to have once we got married. Or how things are just going to work out for us and just fall in our lap and everything's just going to be fine. And even if we may not have ever articulated it that way, we believed it to be true, or we were at least kind of surprised when things didn't turn out that way. When life happened, when things happened that we didn't expect, and we had to deal with that. We had to make some tough choices and some tough decisions. And here's where we find ourselves. Paul describes it this way in 1 Timothy chapter 6, verses 9 and 10. If you got a Bible, I invite you to turn there. If you got a Bible app, scroll there. If you don't, look on the screen. Most of the verses I'm going to be using today are going to be on the screen. But Paul says in 1 Timothy chapter 6, beginning verse 9, he says, people who want to get rich fall into temptation and a trap and into many foolish and harmful desires that plunge men into ruin and destruction. For the love of money is a root of all kinds of evil. And some people, eager for money, have wandered from the faith and pierced themselves with many griefs. Now, I know that's a really long verse. It's a lot of words. But notice what Paul says here. It's not money itself that's the problem. What is it? It's the love of money, the eagerness to have more of it, the desire for more and the willingness to do anything to get it and to do anything more to hold on to it. That's where the danger lies. And he says people who have that kind of passion, people whose hearts are controlled in that way by a desire for money, have plunged themselves into all sorts of problems, have pierced themselves with all kinds of grief. And what I want to do this morning, if you look at that verse again, what if, just in your mind's eye, what if we replaced the words people with the words couples? Couples who want to get rich. Couples who want to have what everybody else has. Couples who want to have the nicest, newest, biggest, you fill in the blank. Couples who want to get rich fall into temptation and a trap and foolish and harmful desires. Some couples, eager for money, eager for stuff, eager for status, have wandered from the faith, have walked away from their faith in Jesus, and have pierced themselves with many griefs. They've plunged themselves into ruin, and they've had to deal with lots of grief. Why? Because they were convinced that their passion and their love for money and possessions was going to provide all the answers, and it didn't. If that's where your marriage is right now, this morning, I want to help you. I want to help you not only let go of this myth and of these expectations. I want to give you some action steps to help you achieve not necessarily financial greatness, but financial peace in your marriage. And there are some of you this morning where it's not stressful. Things are good. God's been blessing you, and you've been making good, wise financial decisions. You and your spouse have financial peace right now. Thank God for it. I challenge you with this. I would guarantee you know a couple that doesn't have financial peace right now. And so maybe some of the stuff we share this morning, you can share with them. Because they're too embarrassed to ask for help themselves, and they're never going to have that conversation with you. And you might have to take some initiative to share some of the things with them. But I hope this is something that can be a benefit not only to the people in this room, but people that you know as well. And if you're not married yet, I want you to understand that this automatic financial peace concept is a myth. It doesn't just happen. You don't just get married and go, whew, finances, done. Don't have to worry about that anymore. Doesn't work that way. I want to help you prepare for having financial peace in your marriage. So I invite you this morning. I invite you to, if you got your pen and your announcement sheet, write these things down. If you don't, use the notes app on your phone or your tablet. Send these to email them to yourself, text them to somebody that you think needs to hear them. But let's share some of these things quickly this morning and talk about how God can give us financial peace. How do we find that? How do we get this financial? If it's not going to happen automatically, how do we get financial peace in our marriages? Here's step number 1: recognize your spouse's needs. Before you do anything else, recognize what it is that your spouse needs from you. Decades ago, there's a man named Willard Harley that wrote a book called His Needs, Her Needs. And talking about two people in marriage and husbands and wives in general. And there's exceptions, of course, to every rule, but he went through a book and said, here's Here's some of the most common needs that every husband has and that every wife has. And if you're trying as a spouse to meet your spouse's needs, things are going to be a blessing in your marriage. Of all the things that he talks about, there's a couple that I want to point out to you this morning. One need that husbands in general have is to feel that they are being honored and respected by their wives as protectors and as providers for the family. That's a need that they have. And they may not articulate that, and there may be someone who goes, no, I'm fine, we're good. But it really is an innate need. And that's not to say that wives can't be providers for the home as well. But there's something in our DNA, there's something in the way that God has made husbands that causes us to want to feel like our wives see us as good providers and good protectors. So ladies, when you're constantly second-guessing your husband, when you're questioning every financial decision that he makes, when you're criticizing him for the way your family looks compared to other families, when you're constantly comparing your marriage to other couples, you are causing your husband to feel underappreciated and unloved and hurt. Recognize your spouse's need. Wives, one of the needs that they have, of several that they have, one of the needs that wives have is to feel secure and to feel taken care of. And I know that sounds a little bit chauvinistic, like I have to take care of my little wife because she's defenseless. And that's not what I mean at all. But there's something in the way that women, the wives are created, the way that God created them, that they want to feel secure. And if they have to help out in the secure part, fine. But they don't want to have to stress and worry about their physical safety, about their emotional safety, and about their financial safety. They want to feel like everything's okay. And when we are swimming in debt, and when we are unable to make payments, and when we are worried about what's going to happen before we get to our next paycheck, we are causing our wives to feel anything but secure and protected and taken care of. It's a need these ladies have. And husbands, we need to do what we can to meet that need. We need to recognize, when we're just talking about our finances, we need to recognize in our marriages, what does my spouse need from me? And if the financial choices that I'm making, the financial decisions that I'm making, the ways that I'm using the finances that we have is undermining and cutting out those needs, I need to change something about me. I need to do something different. Solomon says in Proverbs chapter 3, do not keep good from those who should have it when it is in your power to do it. Husbands, your wife should have peace and security and freedom from fear, so give it to her. Provide it for her with your financial choices. Wives, your husband should have support and trust from his spouse, so provide it for him. Give it to him. Help him make good financial decisions. Before we go through any other steps, number one thing you need to do is recognize, what does my spouse need from me? Number two, you need to have an honest conversation with your spouse. You need to have an honest conversation with your spouse. One of the most effective ways that Satan attacks our marriages is through our silence, through our lack of engagement. And we talked about this a few weeks ago when Christy was up here with me, and we were talking about communication. We were talking about there's some of us that we already assume that a conflict is going to take place, that an argument or disagreement is going to take place. And because of that, we want to make sure that we just avoid it altogether. So let's not even bring it up. If I know that what I'm about to say is going to cause a problem, is going to cause an argument, then I'm just not going to bring it up. Problem solved. We need to have honest conversations about our finances. Some of us hate talking about our finances, especially with our spouses. We're embarrassed. because maybe things aren't what we hope they would be. We feel vulnerable. We feel like, especially if I don't know all the answers and I don't know what to do next, that feels weak and that feels vulnerable, and I don't want to be that person for my spouse. We feel unequipped. I don't know exactly what to do next. I don't know what decisions we're supposed to make, and I feel inept in making those decisions, so I don't want to have this conversation. We feel jealous of other people. We're envious of what other people have, and yet we recognize I'm not supposed to be envious. And now I feel bad about myself about being envious, and I just don't even want to talk about it. Of all the people we should be able to talk about our finances with, it should be our spouse. Difficult as it might be sometimes, we need to have conversations. We need to have honest conversations. We don't need to lie about bills or savings or dumb stuff we bought. Be honest about those things. Our spouses need to know what our financial situation is. They need to be free of fear and stress of not knowing. The Apostle Paul says in Ephesians chapter 4, he's talking to church, he's talking to Christians in general. He says in verse 25, each of you must put off falsehood and speak truthfully to your neighbor. Take off the mask and be genuine, be sincere. He says because we as church members are all part of one body. So let's not be fake and not be real with each other. Let's be honest with each other. When I have a disagreement with you, especially if you're my brother or sister in Christ, I need to be able to have a conversation with you about that. And you need to be able to do that with me. And if there's sin in my life, there's temptation in my life, and there's problems that are overwhelming me, of all people I should be able to talk to is my brothers and sisters in Christ. And you should feel able to trust me in having those conversations with me. But take that a step further. We're not just members of one body. In a marriage, we are one body. The two have become one. Husband and wife have become one flesh. We need to be real and honest with each other, especially when it comes to our finances. You want to cause more problems than you might already be experiencing? Lie about your checking account. Don't let your spouse know how big the credit card debt is. Don't be honest about where your savings are or aren't right now. It's just going to make things worse. Let's have honest conversations. Be willing to be open and honest and genuine when it comes to talking about our finances. Number 3, get rid of your debt. You want to have financial peace in your marriage, get rid of your debt as fast as you can. I'm not judging you if you have debt. I'm not saying you're a bad person if you have debt in your life. And I'm not saying you're a bad person if you have lots of debt in your life. But I recognize from personal experience and from people that I've talked to, families that have shared things with me, I recognize how much stress and worry and fear and hurt feelings and deceitfulness and conflict and destruction that debt can cause any marriage. And if I recognize that risk, man, I should want to get rid of that quickly. Solomon said in Proverbs chapter 22, I've shared this verse with this church family before, but if you've never underlined this in your Bible or highlighted it somehow, I suggest you do. In Proverbs 22 and verse 7, Solomon says, the rich rules over the poor, and the borrower is the slave of the lender. When you are in debt, the person you are indebted to calls the shots, controls your life until that debt is done, until it's paid for. Someone else is in charge. And if you got lots of debt, you know exactly what that feels like. It doesn't matter what your job is or what you're doing for fun or what game you're going to or when you're trying to go to sleep at night. That debt is in your head and on your heart. And it stays there, and it calls the shots, and it controls your actions and your attitude until it's gone. So get rid of it. You want a marriage that's free from worry and stress and fear, and you want to move closer to financial peace in your marriage? Get rid of your debt. Pay it off. Be done with it. And don't get back into it. Another step, prepare for your future. Get rid of your debt and then prepare for your future. A lot of times we spend so much time focusing on either the mistakes we made in the past and trying to pay for them, or just trying to get through today, we don't even think about the future. Life is going to happen. Unexpected expenses are going to come. Jobs are going to change. You're going to get to the point one of these days where you can't work anymore or as often or for as much as what you are now. When those days come, what are you going to do? And many married couples never get in the habit of saving for the bad times or investing for their future. And because of that, they sacrifice being able to provide for themselves in the future because they're so busy consuming everything that they have now. Again, going back to Solomon in the book of Proverbs. In chapter 21, verse 20, Solomon says, the wise store up choice food and olive oil, but fools gulp theirs down. God, be honest with you. Some of you have been around the dinner table with me before. And if I really like what I'm eating, I gulp it down. It doesn't take me long. We were having a meeting the other day. I think it was with the elders and stuff, and everybody had plates full of food. First one done. They were all talking about different things at church. Man, I'm just eating because it was good. That's a sin I'm confessing to you this morning. Okay, now, the problem is some of us do this with our finances too. As soon as we get that paycheck, we cash it and turn it into something else. We buy stuff that we want right now. We go into debt for the things we want right now. We don't even think about the future. Solomon says if you want to be a wise person, if you want to be a blessing to your marriage, put something away for the future. Now, I'm not a financial guru. I don't know all the things to tell you to invest in, and there are people who do that. I've got resources I can give you. I got people I can put you in contact with. But don't consume everything you have now and have nothing waiting for you in the future. That's not being a blessing to your spouse. That's not being a blessing in your marriage. Very quickly, another step. As we're getting rid of debt, as we're preparing for the future, as we're trying to have these conversations, some of us may need to get help. Maybe you had never had good financial decisions modeled for you. Maybe in the house you grew up in, your parents were always in debt and made dumb choices. And so you don't even know what it's like to be in a home that doesn't have stress over finances. Maybe you just never been good at knowing what decisions to make financially. Or maybe you're already kind of in a bad financial state and you don't know how to get out of it. Too many times we're so embarrassed to be in the situation that we're in that we don't want to ask for help. We don't want anyone to know our mistakes and our failures. We don't want anybody to know how bad it's gotten, especially in our churches. I've said before to folks, I think there's sometimes, and I've never tested this theory, but there's sometimes that I believe that some people would almost rather confess a sexual affair in their marriage than financial problems in their marriage. Because we're so embarrassed to confess to other people the things that we've done with our finances that we just stay in the problems that we're in and never get help getting out of it. A few weeks ago, I got to go to a Razorback basketball game with a couple of guys, and Jerry Cabinets had some tickets for us, and my son Ethan and I were driving down to meet him, and we're on Highway 412 in Taneytown. We're getting ready to turn in a place that we were going to meet him, and in the turning lane was a car just sitting there. And so we came up behind it, we turned in the place we're going to meet, and I thought, I don't think that car is supposed to just be sitting there. And so we parked, and then I walked all the way from the parking lot and out into the middle of the busy highway, knocked on the window, scared the guy to death, and he turned and looked at me and rolled his window down. I said, "Is everything okay?" And he said, "The car just died." Okay. I don't know how long he'd been sitting there before I got there. He's not doing anything about the situation. He is stuck between 4 lanes of moving traffic. There's a gas station, I'm not kidding, Jerry can attest to this, maybe 100 feet from where he is. There's a gas station right there. He's just sitting in his car. So Ethan and I pushed, and Mike showed up at the very tail end and helped. Sorry, Mike. Helped push the car off the highway to the gas station. And I thought to myself later, I wonder how long he would have sat there. Because he didn't, maybe he had called somebody. I don't know. I'll give him the benefit of the doubt. Maybe he'd already called somebody to come help. But he's just sitting there. There's a problem. There's a solution. I need help getting from here to there. But I'm not going to ask. T and y'all are laughing going, that's just dumb. I thought it was too. Guess what? It's what a lot of us do in a lot of different situations in our lives. We got temptations, we got struggles, we got things we're dealing with, and there's help to be had. There's answers for us, there's solutions, there's ways to make things better. No, I'll just stay right here and just try to figure it out on my own. And when it comes to our finances, there's help to be had. There's people we can ask to help us make things better. No, I don't want people to know. I don't want people to know how bad it is, and so I'm just not going to say anything. Get some help. Solomon says in Proverbs chapter 15, plans fail for lack of counsel, but with many advisors they succeed. If you don't know how to get your family where you would like them to be financially, then drop your pride and get some help. Lastly, be content. I know that's easier said than done. I know I'm preaching as much to myself as I am to you. Be content with what God has blessed you with. Be happy with what God has given you. Don't constantly compare yourself to other people, to what they have and what you wish you had. The author of Hebrews says in Hebrews chapter 13 and verse 5, keep your lives free from the love of money. We've already talked about what the love of money can do to marriages, right? Keep your lives free from the love of money and be content with what you have. Why? Because God said, never will I leave you, never will I forsake you. The reason that some of us become discontent is because not only do we see what other people have, we assume that it's up to us to get what they have. I see their house, I see their cars, I see their lifestyle, I see all the things that they get to do, and I want those things for myself, I want those things for my family, and so I got to do whatever I can to make it happen. And God is saying, I'm going to take care of you. I'm going to bless you. You're going to be fine. It may not look like that, but I'm going to take care of you. Folks, it's not just selfishness, it's a lack of trust. It's a lack of faith on our part when we aren't content with what God has blessed us with. It is in us telling God, you're not good enough. I've got to do better. And we get ourselves into all sorts of trouble. Be content. Be content with what you have. I'm not saying it's wrong to work hard and to earn money and to earn more money and to enjoy things. That is not what I'm saying. I am saying don't be consumed by them. Don't let those things become your master. Be content with what you have. I need to wrap up this morning. I want you to understand today that this isn't just what we're talking about this morning isn't just a financial issue. And it isn't just even a marriage issue. This is a spiritual issue. This is about us getting ourselves into places that we shouldn't and not knowing how to get ourselves out. Many years ago, I was conducting a youth basketball practice at one of our local elementary schools. And my youngest son was climbing on the climbing wall that they had on one of the walls of this gym that we were in. And I'm doing basketball practice with another one of my sons, the team, and I'm not really paying a whole lot of attention. But he's climbing up this climbing wall, and he got up to the very top of it. And there was a place at the very top of it that if you got on the top and kind of scooted to the side, you were away from the climbing wall and kind of sitting on some metal bars that were attached to the wall and to kind of a metal post that came out from the wall that kind of held the ceiling up. And he was sitting on that and couldn't figure out how to get back down. And when I glanced over and saw where he was and saw the expression on his face, I stopped practice. And I walked over. And I reached up and got to where he could give me his hands. And I got him down. And I share that story quickly with you this morning. Because I know that my son did not start at the bottom of this going, let's see, how can I get stuck? And went to it. If your marriage is in an unhealthy financial place right now, I don't assume that you started out going, let's see how much debt we can get into. Let's see how we can pile some more stress and fear into our marriage. There's not enough right now. Let's go ahead and add some more. Let's figure out how to do that. The reason my son got stuck was little steps all the way to that place. The way you got to where you are financially is from choices you made along the way. And what I want you to understand is that my God will drop everything and stop everything and come to rescue you. And it may not be your finances. You may have gotten into a porn addiction that you never thought you were going to have. You don't even remember how you started in the first place. But my God sees where you're stuck and is willing to come rescue you. You may have gotten to a point where you're just lying to your spouse all the time and you don't know how you got there, and to the point where you don't know how to be honest with your spouse anymore. And I want you to understand that my God can rescue you and will come where you are and rescue you from it. And there may be other issues that you're dealing with. There may be addictions that you have. There may be resentment and hatred in your heart that has caused you to feel complete hatred towards somebody else. And you can't even remember when you used to feel good about that person. You can't remember how you got there, but you know that hate is there. And I want you to understand that my God will rescue you where you are right now. Whether it's your finances, whether it's your marriage relationship, whether it's a friendship, whether it's a personal addiction, however you got there, it doesn't matter. My God will meet you where you are. And we'll rescue you. We'll make that opportunity for you. We're going to stand together. We're going to sing a song together. When we do, wherever you are in your life, no matter if it's not financial, no matter what the problem is and where you are stuck in your life, we invite you, just short of getting on our knees and begging you, please come forward and share that with us. You won't be judged. You'll be loved. And we want you to experience forgiveness and grace. We want to help make that happen for you this morning. And it can happen if you want it to. Please come while we stand and while we sing.